This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Welcome to episode 602. My guy, Adam the Jock Strozinski, is here with me today to break down the Super Bowl. What can we learn from what the Eagles were able to accomplish? How did we watch the game? Did we enjoy it? It was a beatdown. Did Adam understand what Kendrick Lamar was doing? Because I didn't, but the kids and the nephew were kind of filling me in. I guess that's the epic diss of all time, and it's very interesting, but we're here today to break down kind of the jealousy that we feel that the Eagles were able to do everything the right way, even down to Kellen Moore winning the Super Bowl as an OC, and then leaving, not in the division, but respectfully taking the head coaching job of the New Orleans Saints. Cause what's going on? Real crazy game. The Eagles just curb stomped the Kansas City Chiefs. It wasn't even a competitive game, but I just watched that game going, man, that's PhD level general managership from Howie Roseman. It would have been nice if the Lions were able to build that way. They could have, but they instead kind of went a different direction. Doesn't mean they're not going to be successful, but my goodness, kudos from me to the Eagles for what they were able to do.
Yeah, we talked on Saturday morning, and we were kind of discussing a little bit about the Super Bowl because we didn't really have a chance to talk about it last week. But you had asked me who I wanted to win, and I basically told you I was pro Team Meteor because I think Philly fans are horrible people, and I don't think they deserve anything nice. And I obviously can't stand Kansas City, and I wish Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift would get launched out of a cannon. Also, I can't stand Brittany Mahomes, and I can't stand Patrick Mahomes and pretty much all of the Mahomes family. So they too can get put on a rocket and launched to Mars because I don't like any of them. So watching this game, I was kind of like, I don't really care who wins. I was rooting for some type of awesome space event to take place where a massive meteor strikes the stadium and kills both teams. I know it sounds harsh, but that was what I was feeling in my heart of hearts. So watching this game, really just kind of sitting back, looking for an entertainment viewing, sitting back, kind of just trying to take it all in, not really rooting for anybody, not really caring. It's kind of different. This was the first Super Bowl in a long time where I can say I had zero rooting interest and I did not care who won because I didn't like either of these teams. Normally, you'll find yourself watching a game and then all of a sudden something will happen and your true feelings come out. In this game, I felt nothing the entire time. It was like being with that girlfriend who cheated on you and you're trying to make it work and you feel nothing. You go to kiss her, you go to rub her back, she goes to rub your back, she goes to rub you in your pants, and you feel nothing. You just feel dead inside. That was how I felt watching the Super Bowl. Felt dead inside. But look, I think you can take a couple of things away from this game. I think there are a few things that you can look back through the course of the season. You can look back on what took place on Sunday. You can look back and kind of draw some connections to how it impacts the Detroit Lions and where the Detroit Lions may need to go, kind of giving you a little bit of a baby blueprint for what Brad Holmes has to do this offseason. And look, first things first, the big thing that I took away from this game, just look at the score. You don't necessarily even have to watch the game because the Chiefs played an absolutely abysmal football game. The Chiefs did not deserve to win the AFC. Really and truly, when you go back and you look at it, the Bills should have been in that position. It should have been the Bills versus the Eagles. That should have been what the Super Bowl was. The Chiefs did not deserve the record that they ended up with over the course of the season. The Chiefs did not deserve to win the AFC. The Chiefs did not deserve to be there. Look, they are a good team, but they were a better story for the NFL. And that is why all throughout the week leading up to the Super Bowl, there were lots of conversations about whether or not the referees helped the Chiefs win. if you watched any of the games this year from the Chiefs, and generally right around week 8, I think everybody started to kind of put 2 and 2 together and be like, wow, that was a questionable call. Wow, that was a questionable call. The Chiefs were just eking by, just barely winning games by the skin of their teeth. And usually there was a call on the field that helped put them in position to seal the victory. So I'm not saying that the games were fixed. I'm just saying that the games were massaged into the Chiefs' favor. The Chiefs took advantage of it. The Chiefs ended up winning the AFC. I think when we go back and we look at that Bills-Chiefs game for the AFC Championship, that fourth down plays a huge role. I've watched that video over and over like the Zapruder film. And I think Josh Allen had that first down. I thought he had it the moment it happened. I thought he had it by a football, a shoulder, and half a head length going from the center of his body all the way out to past the first down marker. I thought he had it all day. Whatever. They don't get it. It's what it is. The Chiefs get to the Super Bowl and they get absolutely embarrassed. Absolutely embarrassed, which leads me to my second point. Nobody was beating the Chiefs. We're Lions fans. We're huge Detroit fans. We said it a couple weeks ago. I'll say it again. Nobody was beating the Chiefs. Your Detroit Lions were not beating nobody was beating the Eagles. Your Detroit Lions were not beating the Eagles. There was no chance in hell. The Eagles looked like a team of destiny. The Eagles had this awesome run game that was able to ground and pound and grind you out. They had a quarterback who was incredibly efficient and protected the football. They had a quarterback who, when needed, could make timely throws. And then on top of all of that, they had a defense that was nasty. More specifically, they had a nasty defensive front. And that, my friends, that, boys and girls, that is how you handle and dismantle elite quarterbacks. You need to have a nasty defensive front that can get to the quarterback, collapse the pocket, make them pay anytime they have to stand in and throw the football. And that is what you've seen from the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. Patrick Mahomes had no idea what was going on. He was seeing ghosts out there. And when he wasn't seeing ghosts, he was seeing green jerseys smack him in the face. It was fantastic to watch the Eagles' defensive front, not even blitz, just put pressure and apply pressure and keep applying pressure to Patrick Mahomes, and watching him have to scramble, watching him try to make plays, watching plays not develop downfield. Normally, he'll get out of the pocket, gives him more than enough time to have something develop, kind of go off script a little bit, freelance, and he'll make something happen. He didn't have the ability to do that because the defensive front was in his face so much, and they hit him so many times that he ended up getting shell-shocked. He looked like Sam Darnold when Sam Darnold was playing the Detroit Lions in Week 17. They basically hit the reset button on Patrick Mahomes, and it was fantastic. And that leads me to this. If you're Brad Holmes, you have to figure out a way to somehow duplicate that. I'm not saying that you need to go out and you need to spend a ton of money on a bunch of free agents. I'm not saying that you have to invest all of your draft capital in the defensive line. But we've been talking about it now for a year and a half, 2 years. It's been the one thing that we've constantly harped on. That was the one thing that we were incredibly excited about when they drafted Aiden Hutchinson, is you've added a stud to your defensive line. You have Lee McNeil. He's a stud as well. You need to add another guy who's going to be a war daddy, who's going to help you get to quarterbacks, specifically elite quarterbacks. A guy like a Jalen Hurts, a guy like a Patrick Mahomes, a guy like a Josh Allen, a guy like a Lamar Jackson, guys who are considered to be elite in the NFL. You have to be able to get to them. You have to be able to disrupt them. You have to break up their timing, and you have to put them on their ass when you have chances. I think for the Detroit Lions to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender, because right now, after what I just seen, I would say your Detroit Lions are a Super Bowl pretender, and obviously not even good enough to get to the NFC Championship game. But if they were lucky enough to make it to the NFC Championship game, they are a Super Bowl pretender. They are not the real deal. They need to figure out a way to somehow address that defensive line, and I think it has to come in the way of a trade, maybe Myles Garrett, or it has to be in the way of free agency. They've got to go out there and they've got to find a guy that they can plug in and is going to make this defensive front that much more nasty, that much more aggressive, that much more angry and badass and difficult to play against. You can't go out and you can't do it for pennies on the dollar and get guys who are going to get banged up in the first 2 weeks of the football season and then are on IR. And then you've got to kind of do this patchwork system. It's just not going to work, especially having new coordinators, especially on the defensive side. It's going to be a first-year defensive coordinator. You can't put them in positions like that. You have to go out. You have to figure out a way to strengthen up that defensive front. And specifically, I would like them to go get an edge rusher. But you know what? Go get another D tackle. I don't care. Go get a 2-for-1. It's a BOGO deal. You buy a defensive end, you get a defensive tackle for free. Figure it out. Make it work. You've got to get this defensive line that much more aggressive, that much more nasty. And the way to do it is through a trade or free agency, because I don't think you can draft somebody who's going to step in immediately, especially at 28. Step in immediately and give you what you need. Look, I think if you can go out and get an edge rusher, and again, do that through trade or free agency, you can then come back at 28 and draft a D tackle, and I think you can plug them into the middle of that defensive line, and you can protect them a little bit. Put them alongside Aleem McNeil. Hopefully he comes back at 100% after his knee gets repaired, and hopefully Aiden comes back at 100%. Again, a whole bunch of ifs and buts for that defensive line right now, but you could protect a young player, a guy that you drafted at 28 there, but you have to be able to go out and get somebody else and put them opposite of Aiden or put them opposite of Aleem. Again, I would go and trade for a defensive end, or I would go sign somebody in free agency. Do you agree with me that the Detroit Lions, in order to be considered a legitimate Super Bowl contender, has to go out and figure out a way to duplicate what you've seen the Philadelphia Eagles do and how they were able to dismantle one of the best quarterbacks of a generation, the guy who basically picked the torch up from Tom Brady as being the GOAT, and Patrick Mahomes, and just disrupt them constantly and apply pressure and squeeze them and make them falter time in and time out, because this game was nowhere close to what that score indicated. This game was a runaway. By the first half, you could have shut it off if you wanted to. You didn't have to stick around for the halftime performance. You could have just shut the game off right then and there at the half, because it was done. It was over. Kansas City's fate was sealed because that defensive line was that nasty. Does Detroit have to upgrade that defensive front?
Yeah, you look at it, and cause it was crazy. I look at it and I say, my goodness, the way in which the game shook out, you don't see defensive lines just completely dominate another team in that fashion. And it's so wild to think about that the Detroit Lions tried to build a defensive line, but it got decimated by injuries, and some of the guys that you didn't develop, that you wanted to develop, didn't get to the point where you needed to. And here's the issue too, and it's one that we've talked about a little bit at Lions on SI, and you and I as well, but there has not been continuity in terms of the defensive line coach under Dan Campbell. It's been one guy after another, going from Todd Wash, then to John Scott Jr. He was inexperienced. Then you go to Terrell Williams. Now you get your young cats developing, and he goes off to become the Patriots defensive coordinator. So not only did you not develop as well as you thought, you swung and missed a little bit on Josh Pascal, Levi Onwuzurike, James Houston, and then the coaching staff is not as consistent. So you have to go back to the drawing board, and I do think that it's fair to say one of the criticisms, and it's tough to build a championship world caliber team. One of the things that they've still yet to address is who's going to help Aiden Hutchinson. They tried with Marcus Davenport. He got hurt. You're absolutely right. Back to the drawing board. But at least there's a template to say that is something possible. And it is, water cooler talk to debate. Hey, should the Lions have drafted Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith? Should they have? We talked about it, saying, hey, maybe you do need some dogs. Maybe you do need some guys that maybe are outside your comfort zone. Well, they did in C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but that blew up in their face, and I think that they said, okay, we have our guys, and unfortunately, your guys got hurt. So I'm hoping that back to the drawing board, that you can maybe even draft 3 of the 6 or 7 picks that you have dedicated to the defensive line, offensive line, maybe even 4, maybe 2. You need a defensive tackle. You need depth. You need a lot. The Detroit Lions were trying their absolute best to build a championship caliber team, but in the end, your graduate level, but the PhD master is Howie Roseman. That's how you build it. You had a down year. You had Matt Patricia. You took a swing. Disaster. You go back to the drawing board. You draft 2 defensive backs, and you get 2 amazing coordinators, and you basically took a swing. Saquon Barkley, you made a move for A.J. Brown to help out Jalen Hurts. So the last couple years, they've done a great job. You're absolutely right. You have to have, because a 4-man front with no blitzes, 0 called blitzes, and that's the legendary Vic Fangio for you. He's just somebody that out of this world talented and brought the Eagles to what everybody wanted. And I just think that absolutely that's the starting point. Offensive line, defensive line, it's no secret. But now you can see what elite drafting looks like when you hit on 4 or 5 guys that come back, and then you get your veterans in Graham and Sweat kind of showcasing their skills at the right time. And that's what happened. The Eagles peaked. So do you think, based on what you saw and how the Eagles played, do you think John Morton will kind of adapt a little bit more of the Kellen Moore style? You saw, I think they reported the stat on the broadcast that the Eagles ran the most in the NFL at a 56% clip of their offensive plays were run plays. And even though it wasn't as successful against a decent defense in the Super Bowl, they still ran it to Saquon. They kept the Eagles offense kept the Chiefs defense out there on the field. Do you think the Lions got to morph their offensive system just a little bit? But it's tough because you got St. Brown and J-Mo, and more people are going to want to see some explosive plays from J-Mo too.
Well, I think here's the thing, right? If you look at what happened with Philadelphia's offense, right? They basically ran the ball to set up the pass. I think with this Lions offense, you can do something similar. You can come out and you can even flip it up and down if you want. You could do some really short intermediate passes because Jared Goff excels at those, and that could really open up that play action that they like to run, could really help set up the run game, and you could take advantage of that. And then you could just sit there and ground and pound and control time of possession. And then what that'll do is that'll open things up on the back end so guys like J-Mo can get loose deep. So guys like St. Brown can end up catching something intermediate and then taking it to the house. I think what you've seen is the run game. The Eagles have shown you the run game is not dead. We've gone to such a pass-happy league where you're constantly investing money in the quarterback. You're constantly investing money in the wide receivers. You've seen what happens when you get a special running back. You can invest in them, put an offensive line around them, and then you can run the ball. You can control the clock. You can basically take a football game away from another team in the first quarter by running the ball and executing on those plays. And look, it is a very quid pro quo type of sport, right? Especially on offense. You scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. There is no set way to win a football game, right? You can pass to set up the run. You can run to set up the pass. I think with the way the Lions are put together, they need to lean a little bit more heavily on that run game. And I think the Eagles showed you that you can do that successfully. Now, I'm not saying that Jahmyr Gibbs is Saquon Barkley. I'm not saying that David Montgomery is Saquon Barkley. But what I'm telling you is there's a bit of a template as to what you can do. You can lean on these backs in this game, and they can take a load off of the quarterback, take a burden off of the quarterback. And as long as your quarterback is efficient and can execute at a high level and protect the football, which we've seen Jared Goff do. There was a stretch last year where I think Jared Goff missed 18 passes over the course of 6 or 8 games. That's absolutely crazy. Jared Goff is efficient. Jared Goff excels in that style of football when you are running the ball at a really solid clip and putting him in position where he only has to throw 18, 20, 25. I think you start to play a little bit of a dangerous game when you've got Jared Goff dropping back to throw the ball 35, 40 times. At that moment in time, I don't know if you're actually winning this football game. I don't know if you are in a position to win this football game. I think the way this team is constructed, they have to run the ball more. They've got to lean on those running backs in order to do it. You need to take a page out of the Eagles playbook and be that ground and pound style of football team to then set up your pass. And again, you have a quarterback who is very, very efficient, especially if you give him time. He needs to be efficient with the football, get the ball downfield into playmakers' hands like JMO or St. Brown, Sam Laporta to a little bit of a lesser extent, and let those guys do work when they get the ball. But I think there is a really nice game plan that came out of this Super Bowl from the Philadelphia Eagles that the Lions can kind of stick with. And look, with the Lions, you've got a lot of changeover. And this becomes a little bit of a question mark, right? Because now you've got new coaching staff kind of moving in. The coaching staff is starting to come into focus a little bit, but you have two coordinators who are pretty young to their positions, right? I know Johnny Morton has been a offensive coordinator. He was it for the Jets for a little bit. But still, when you really look at the grand scheme of things, very, very young. You've got two coordinators that almost feel like they're brand new. It's like when you buy a hat and you still have the sticker on it, when you still have the 3930 or you've got the 5950 sticker on it. They're brand new, it feels like. With all of that and all of the changing with the coaching staffs, because your coaching staff has been picked apart. Which coach makes you most uncomfortable? Is it the offensive coordinator or is it the defensive coordinator?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I look at it and I say the Lions maybe could have adapted and maybe went the same way the Eagles did and get the best of the best. I mean, who's to say why not Vic Fangio in Detroit? Like, hey, you realize, hey, you got to be a little proactive. Why not have an opportunity to get the best of the best here in Detroit and get someone with world-class experience? But I respect familiarity. I respect the fact that it's basically going to be the same defense with Calvin Shepard. So I'm not really concerned. It's the same defense. It literally is going to be the same defense. Maybe there's going to be some adaptation in regards to blitzing and probably, trying to win a little bit more one-on-one with your fronts. So I hope that that's the case. I don't have concerns per se, but I would think that, the one that has more question marks would be the defense. Like you pretty much assume, okay, the linebackers are going to thrive because it's their former linebackers coach. The part that's concerning, and because you hate to say it, it's too early, but it's fair to at least look at. I kind of am leaning toward Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell as kind of being the guys the Lions should have drafted. And I know it's, being a prisoner of the moment, seeing Cooper DeJean. But Jack Campbell told me he's a dog. And you saw him make plays as a special teamer at Iowa. And, I mean, I know that there's a stigma regarding, white defensive backs. But the guy made plays. And Jack Campbell, when I asked him, he's like, yeah, that guy's a dog. And clearly he's a dog. And I thought that Quinyon Mitchell, made some plays. But I do expect Terrion Arnold to develop. The question mark is going to be Ennis Rakestraw. You can't redshirt. You can't draft redshirt guys. I know that he was dealing with something, but I don't understand what purpose is when you saw a guy that was dealing with what he was dealing with coming out of college and you still took a chance. I get the long-term play, but it kind of really, to me, cause it's kind of looking like this football team said, okay, if it's going to, our window's 23, 24, 25. Well, you struck out 23, 24. It's lending towards some real pressure here that 25 is going to be the make or break season, and you're going into one of the most brutal stretches of schedule that you're going to see. So I do think the defense will have more question marks because the offense has talent. And I do think on that side of the ball, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes a little bit more than the X's and O's. But yeah, you got to run the ball. I do think that Jahmyr Gibbs will get the football quite a bit, and you just got to make sure that the offensive line is tightened up. So my biggest question mark would be on defense. Because, as everybody knows, and now the Eagles put it smack dab in our face, defense does win championships. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Defense wins championships. And look, I think this is the big thing that came out of this Super Bowl. If you are a Lions fan, you have to, at some point this offseason, start to invest more heavily in that defense. You've got to find a couple more guys up front to help Aiden, to help Aleem. There's been a lot of resources, a lot of high-end resources invested in this offense. I think we all get excited when we see the sizzle, but sometimes you need a little bit more steak, and you need that steak on the defense. So it's going to be incumbent on Brad Holmes to go out there and invest in this defense. You need to start using some of those first-round picks if you have them. If you don't use them as trade bait to go get somebody, you need to start to utilize some of those defensive or those draft assets and start investing them on your defensive line. And you need to start investing them a little bit more heavily, maybe in your defensive secondary. I like what they've done. They've kind of revamped that secondary this year. But again, we've talked about it a ton of times. What makes the secondary so much better is having guys up front who can get to the quarterback. I mean, you've seen it in the Super Bowl. You brought up Cooper DeJean. Guy looked amazing out there. And why? Because you had a quarterback who was constantly pressured, constantly rushed, had a dude in his face. So go out there, get some meat, and get some potatoes for that defensive line and stack them up front and let these guys go to work and make your secondary, a guy like a Terrion Arnold or an Ernest Rakestraw, make them look better than what they actually are. And that's how you do it. So I think you have to invest in the defense. You got to go get, like you said, the Jimmies and the Joes, not so much the X's and O's, right? I think the X's and O's are important, but you need some of those Jimmies and Joes up front. So go get a couple of those guys in this draft, or go get a couple of these guys in free agency or trade, and really help bolster what could be a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that there's some learning to be done on all sides, from Dan Campbell and his in-game coaching, from Brad Holmes in regards to the strategy. All right, let's discuss. Do you think they changed the strategy? Do you think Brad Holmes is a little more aggressive in this offseason? I do think that the opportunity to be just a little more aggressive, because if you look at it, draft and develop, it kind of lends to the idea that you got to put kind of some criticism on Brad Holmes because he has not been able to find that edge rusher. So now you would be taxed in order to get that person in Myles Garrett. So if you want to save face, you kind of are forced. Look, Myles Garrett's an outlier. He's somebody that every NFL team wants, but it's going to cost probably a player and maybe 2 picks. You're not going to probably get 2 first-rounders for someone just at 29 with the contract. So maybe it's going to be realistically like a first and a third and a player, or a first and a 2 seconds, kind of in that neighborhood. There's going to be probably a first-round pick involved. But do you mask the fact that you can't get the edge rusher by getting Myles Garrett, or do you just power through and say, come hell or high water, we're going to get Shamar Stewart, we're going to try to get Josiah Stewart, we'll just keep doubling down and finding players that we believe fit the mold? Do you do that, or you just say, look, it's Myles Garrett, we don't care about what we've said about our process, we'll just go out there and get them and make everybody happy and kind of take the pressure off? I feel like it's a swing that PR-wise, I think it's a win-win, because you show that you care. You kind of show that, okay, we truly believe Myles Garrett is going to be better than any first-round pick we're going to get. And it kind of opens up the idea that Aleem and Aiden will shine and do better. So I think it's a win-win. But at the same token, if you get Myles Garrett, it is realistically saying, okay, we tried to draft defensive linemen, but couldn't do it.
My whole thing is, what does it hurt if you take a swing for Myles Garrett and you don't get him? What's the worst thing that happens? You look like you tried for him. You look like you tried to get him. It didn't necessarily work out. So now what? You've got draft capital, and you can go into the draft and you can try to find guys, or you can go to free agency and try to find guys. I think if you're Brad Holmes, you kind of have to swing for the fences here, right? You have to try to go get a guy like a Myles Garrett, or you need to get a guy like a Max Crosby, and you need to try to bring them in, because I think at this moment in time, you are so close to that finish line. You just need a couple more pieces to put you over. I think Brad Holmes has had massive swings and misses, right? Josh Pascal's not been very good. Levi Onwuzurike has been a complete and utter flop. Yeah, you hit a home run with Aleem McNeil. Great. Aiden Hutchinson, I can't really give you credit for it because he was the best player in that draft, or he was the best defensive end in that draft. He was all the way at the very, very top. You got him at 2. Congratulations. Even a blind man could see that he was going to be a stud. So good job on you for grabbing him. You need to figure out ways and do more. Broderick Martin, he's on the side of a milk carton. I can't tell you the last time I've seen Broderick Martin play a game or play a meaningful snap or do something meaningful. So you've swung and missed a ton of times. So at this moment in time, everybody wants to give Brad Holmes credit. I can't give him credit for what he's done along that defensive front. So if you can go out and get a guy like a Myles Garrett, you can go get a guy like a Max Crosby, guys where you actually know what they are, just go ahead and trade the draft picks. Go get a guy who is a certified Hall of Famer and a guy who could possibly be a Hall of Famer in Max Crosby and bring them here. Just do it. It'll be fine. It'll all be okay. I think if you're Brad Holmes, you have to engage in these conversations. You have to have a serious conversation about bringing some of these guys in here. And again, worst case scenario, somebody offers a little bit more than you. Well, there's not a whole lot that you can do besides maybe go back to the table and try to offer a little bit more. But again, it's kind of a win-win because if you get the player, great. If you don't get the player, you're going right back to the draft. You can just go add a couple guys there and just hope that they pan out. The thing is, Brad Holmes has kind of swung and missed. So I would prefer him to go and grab a guy that we know what their actual floor and their actual ceiling are, and getting a guy like a Myles Garrett, getting a guy like a Max Crosby, a Trey Hendrickson, getting these guys and bringing them in, I think would make all the world the difference and will allow a guy like Aiden and Aleem to really play out of their mind. So you got to go do it. I think you have to go make a move. You have to be involved in these conversations, and you've got to figure out a way to get this done.
Understood, yeah. It was eye-opening, man. The Super Bowl was crazy. What did you think real fast before we start talking about the Pistons? Thumbs up or thumbs down on Kendrick Lamar? I didn't understand it. Look, that's just clearly not going to be my genre of music. It was entertaining, I guess, but it was more the opportunity that the 20 minutes was to get up, make another plate of food, chit-chat about how shitty the game was, and kind of pay attention to it, but not to the degree in which it was serious. I don't think it was so strong of a thing that I had like people will go to Twitter and be like, oh my God, it's the worst thing ever or the best thing ever. It kind of went along cultural lines, per se, from how I saw it. I enjoyed rating the commercials a little bit better. In my mind, the Stella Artois, the Stella commercial was the best one. With
David Beckham and...
Absolutely. That rated nuts. Well. And I thought the breast one clearly would catch everybody's attention, but it was on a somber note. But I thought that, a little bit too much of reliance on celebrities, but that's kind of how it's always been. So I rated a lot more down than I liked, but the beer commercials probably did best, but I did not get that passionate about Kendrick Lamar. But I do think that a lot of people, maybe of the Caucasian persuasion, would not understand what the hell was going on at halftime.
So here's the deal. I'm going to talk about the show first, then I'm going to talk a little bit about Kendrick. I think what he did, how he utilized that platform to send a massive message, I thought it was awesome. I think there was so much subtle nuance in what he did and the way it was planned, the way it was orchestrated, the way it was crafted, and the way it was done. I thought it was absolutely fantastic and genius. I loved it. I thought the just the subtleness of everything. You had to be paying attention to kind of pick up on a lot of what was being said and a lot of what was being done. There are manifestos out there about his halftime show. And I think that goes to show you how creative, how insightful, and how smart he really is. Now, as far as Kendrick goes, I thought when Kendrick got selected to do the halftime show, I was like, all right, cool. I mean, I guess it's a good choice. I feel like Kendrick Lamar he's a guy where either you like him or you don't. And I don't think enough people are familiar with his catalog of music or familiar with him to really have a fantastic critique on what they had. I feel like Kendrick Lamar, as far as rap goes and as far as rappers go, I feel like he's very good. I at no point feel like he's a GOAT. I at no point put him on, say, my Mount Rushmore of rappers. I think Kendrick Lamar has something that makes him very interesting. It's his voice. His voice is different. There's not a lot of guys in rap that sound like him or even come close to sounding like him. So he has a very unique cadence. He has a very unique sound. But all that being said, it's so unique and it's so different that it turns a lot of people off. And a lot of people don't listen to him. And a lot of people don't necessarily know anything about him. So when he was selected, I thought it was kind of different because he doesn't have a ton of radio play. He's got some radio play, but he doesn't have a ton. Not like a guy like Lil Wayne or a guy like Eminem or a guy like a Jay-Z. when he was picked, I was like, well, that's a little bit polarizing. Now, the whole thing with him and Drake, if you followed along in kind of what's been going on between those guys for the last little bit, I don't think it was a surprise. I think the big surprise was there's a line about Drake being a pedophile that was excluded. And that's because it was on a national broadcast. And I get that. You got to sometimes make things a little bit more PG, especially after the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson fiasco. Things are now much more heavily censored. That's why we have a time delay in television. Most TV that you watch, if it's a live broadcast, is delayed anywhere from 4 to 7 or 8 to 10 seconds. And that's just so somebody can drop something with a censor. Same thing in radio. Radio has a 10-second delay. So everything that you're hearing is 10 seconds already passed. Cut to the chase. I thought it was good. My cousin, who is a bigger rap fan than me, texted me and he was like, well, that sucked. And I was like, it was what it was. I was like, either you loved it or you hated it. I was like, it's Kendrick, man. Like, it is what it is, you know? And he's a bigger rap fan than me. Me and him went out on Saturday night, the Saturday before the Super Bowl, and we were listening to Kendrick driving in his truck. And he was like, have you heard this song? And I was like, what song is that? And he told me the title. I was like, I don't know. He played it. And I was like, yeah, I heard that song. And look, he really likes Kendrick, but he didn't like the halftime show. So I myself am fond of Kendrick. Again, he's not, I'm not going to the store to buy his album. Let me put it to you like that, right? I do like his stuff. I do listen. But all that being said, I thought it was a good show. I thought it was really genius what he did with his time. I thought the songs that he picked were good. There was some radio play in there. There was some other stuff that wasn't radio play. So I thought he did a really, really good job. Like you said, it was very polarizing. It was a very polarizing halftime show. And it does kind of cut along racial lines there, too. So it is what it is, man. Yeah,
really interesting. It was one of those deals where, all in all, luckily you got to see the Eagles make plays. All in all, I'd rate the Super Bowl a B. You wish the game would be more competitive, but I kind of had the feeling like, hey, that was kind of how it would go down. So that's how it went down. And another year in the books, and hopefully the Lions can learn their lesson. And now we kick off the offseason. Next week we'll start talking about needs, where we think the Lions should go, previewing the combine, where they should look in the first round, mock drafts, all the offseason stuff that everybody wants to talk about. We'll start to dive deep on Doc and Jock. With our last couple minutes here, we definitely want to touch on the Pistons and Wings. Still on Bregman watch. Nothing happens as of yet on Tuesday. It looks like there's a bidding war maybe with a couple teams. We'll see by the time this drops if Bregman is a Tiger, and we'll react accordingly. But with the Pistons, they had their trade deadline. They made their moves, kind of acquiring role players. What did you make of their moves? I thought maybe they would take a swing at more, but in the end, I thought that if there was a trade piece, it was Malik Beasley that could have maybe netted you a pick. But I love the fact that he went to the office and said, hey, I want to be here. I am a Piston. I want to do my job. And then he went out the next performance and dropped threes like it was going out of style. And I can respect that he didn't want to be traded. And the Pistons, Trajan Langdon, obliged. What did you make of the moves that the Pistons made? Good enough at least to kind of compete in the postseason? Safe move? Or maybe should they have taken a bigger swing?
Look, I like the Schroeder move. I thought that was low-key fantastic, right? That's a guy who you're going to go out, you're going to grab, and he's going to kind of fill in that Jaden Ivey role until Ivey's able to get back and be healthy. I thought that was a really, really smart move. I thought it was really well done. And look, you didn't give up anything. If anything, you acquired more draft capital. Now, I know there's a bunch of second-round picks that you got, but those second-round picks can get packaged with other players for trades or other draft picks to move up and go get a guy that you target and you covet. I think what Trajan Langdon did was really well done. When we talked last week, I didn't think they were going to make a major move. I didn't think they were in a position where this is a team that is going to be competing yet for a championship. So there's no need to basically go all in and invest everything. They're at a completely different spot than where the Detroit Lions are. Lions are at a spot where they should be competing for a championship. They should be in that Super Bowl. They should be a team that should be winning a Super Bowl. Pistons aren't there yet. Pistons are where the Lions were 2-3 years ago. They're good, and they're getting good. And they're going to be a team that's going to be a hard out for somebody when they get to the playoffs. And I think this year, a successful year for the Pistons is getting into the playoffs. A really successful year is winning a round in the playoffs. An even more successful year is going even deeper than that and winning a couple games in that second round, if not winning that second round of the playoff games. So I think what they did was they kind of evaluated where they were. They looked at what they're doing and what they're accomplishing. They like what they have. They don't really want to mess with this nucleus, but you want to add a couple of pieces here or there. And if you can take on some contracts because you got some cap space, if you can somehow acquire more draft picks because you can utilize those in the draft, or you can utilize those for trades during the offseason, you go ahead and do it. And then you add in a guy like a Schroeder who I think is going to play well here. He's a veteran. He's going to bring that veteran presence. This isn't a guy who's going to go out there and light the world on fire, but he's a guy who's going to give you 10-5 and 4 rebounds a game. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's going to go out there and he's going to do stuff. He's going to be an asset, not a liability. And that's what you were looking for. You want a guy who's going to be an asset and kind of help you get to where you need to be. So I think what the Pistons did was absolutely fantastic. It was nothing big, nothing flashy, but I think everything was low key, really well done, well executed. And I think you've covered a lot of different things. You added a player for the now who's going to be responsible, who's going to help you win games, who's going to be a good presence in that locker room. Again, you don't want to necessarily upset the apple cart by bringing in a guy who's kind of a cancer. And on the back end, you added a couple of draft picks, and those draft picks can then be packaged to move up or packaged to go get somebody else in the offseason. So I think what they've done is really, really fantastic. I like where Trajan Langdon has his team progressing. I like what J.D. Bickerstaff is doing. I really like listening to J.D. Bickerstaff talk. Like, they'll have a game, they'll win a game, and they'll look sloppy for half the game, and he's calling guys out. Like, look, this isn't good enough. We started well. We've got to figure things out because we're just not there yet. Like, there's an expectation to show up and be a professional for all 4 quarters of the game, and I love that. I think it's absolutely fantastic and refreshing. I like where the Pistons are at. I think the Pistons are going to be a really nasty team when it comes time for the playoffs. And I don't think they're going to be in one of those stupid play-in games. I think this is going to be a team who could possibly be a 4th or a 5th seed, and they are going to be a really, really difficult out for whomever they're facing.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great respect. It's great to see what the Pistons can do when you have standards. Like, hey, this is Pistons basketball. Yeah, we won the game, but if you don't play to the standard, you're going to get called out. And I think that's where the next step will be, is the players continue to take ownership and, hey, this is the standard, this is the compete level. Each and every day, police the clubhouse and the locker room and become leaders themselves. And those are the teams that typically end up being well. And having talent as well really, really helps out. And I do think that early impressions, Trajan Langdon knows what he's doing. He has a plan, sticking to it, finding Piston players that will represent the brand, understand what they look like they need to do on the court, and hey, number one goal, you got to be able to shoot the rock. And luckily, the Pistons, when they play well, can play a brand of basketball that's competitive. They may not win every game, but they're going to play a brand of basketball that's conducive to winning. And hey, what do you know? That when you build a team with gritty guys that want to play together, with a coach that has a standard that holds the players to that standard consistently, and then you have the development of the players. It's key, and that's kind of what you're seeing as well with the Red Wings. It was disappointing the way they played in terms of their defensive effort against Tampa Bay, but look, it's going to happen. You were winners of 7 straight, I believe, at that point, and you just fell short. It was competitive. It was entertaining as hell to watch on a Saturday, but I would say this, that all in all, with the Red Wings, I'm a little concerned that this Nations tournament break, I have no interest in it. I think that, 4 nations or whoever the hell's competing, I'm not interested all that much in paying attention to it. But look, you know, if USA plays Canada, you hope that they rough them up. And you say, okay, and number one thing is Lucas Raymond in Sweden, just don't end up hurt. Don't let anything derail what could be a promising Red Wing season with a tournament in the season. I get it. It's cool. It's gimmicky. But I think for the Red Wings, it might end up being something that you could look at and say, man, this could be a little detrimental, especially with the momentum that Todd McClellan's bringing to the table, especially with his consistent, persistent message of grit, get into the zones and play clean hockey, shoot the puck. I thought that, the Tampa game was an outlier in regards to how the Wings look. They look kind of like the old Wings there under Lalonde to start the game. But by and large, you gotta give, Todd McClellan his kudos for what he's been able to do. It looks professional and it looks so much better, more entertaining. Larkin and DeBrincat look invigorated, and you're seeing a little bit more and more Kane do his thing. It's nice to see him do his get the accolades in the shootouts, and I do think because that goaltending situation with Lyon and Talbot, I think that Cam Talbot, you got to figure out how to figure out who the number one is, and it's kind of like the NFL. If you have two goalies, do you really have one? And I think they got to figure out who the hell the number one is. It seems like Cam is more consistent, but I think they believe that he has a certain ceiling, and maybe they think Lyon has a bigger ceiling if he gets hot. But I'm go with the veteran in my opinion, and let him kind of distinguish himself, and we'll see what it's like moving forward. What's the state of the Wings right now?
I think they're playing incredibly well under McClellan, right? I watched the Tampa Bay game that you mentioned, and look, they fell behind early. They were able to claw their way back. I thought they were going to be able to take that game to an overtime and win it. Final score was not really as indicative as close as that game was in the second and early part of the third period. That game obviously got away from the Wings late in that third period, but I think they're playing really, really well. I think goaltending, we knew this going into the year, was going to be an issue. I told you, Cam Talbot's not necessarily a number one guy. Alex Lyon, you're not really sure what he is. You still got Ville Husso, who is probably at this moment in time of his career is probably best suited for a guy who's starting in your minor league system and is coming up and filling in. I don't think Ville Husso is necessarily a primetime goaltender on a good team. And defensively, I think this team has to get some stuff shored up. They have some of the worst defensive pairs that just give up tons of goals. And I think this is going to be something that they're going to have to address in the offseason. Now, all that being said, I think McClellan's done a fantastic job of kind of working with what he's got and putting these guys in good positions to win games. They're shooting the puck a lot. They're controlling pace of play. They are being able to enter into the zone and get shots on net. And all these things are important because these are what leads to goals. The problem is sometimes they get caught a little flat-footed. Next thing you know, you've got odd man rushes coming the other way, and your goalies really aren't good enough to stand on their head to make those saves, and that costs you. But I see this a little bit different. I think this Four Nations Cup thingy that they've got going on, I think it kind of comes at just the right time. I think it gives these guys a little bit of a break. It gives them a little bit of a rest. I think some of your better players, guys like Dylan Larkin, guys like Lucas Raymond, these guys get to go and they get to play with some of the world's absolute best players. And that makes you better. And that makes you hungrier. Now, obviously, you don't want these guys to get hurt. You don't want these guys to get banged up. And really and truly, these guys could probably use a little bit of the break themselves. But I think this gives them a bit of a different perspective. It's a different sort of pressure, right? Like right now in the season, they're kind of in this pressure cooker because they've got themselves in such a nasty hole and they're fighting their way to dig out of it and get into the playoffs. I think this right here kind of is a little bit of a reprieve. This is you're representing your nation. You're kind of doing these really interesting exhibition games. It's a lot of fun. It's a bit of a fan favorite, fan fest type of thing. So I think the pressure's a little bit different. It's a good reset, and it allows these guys to play with different people who are just as good, if not better than them. And you can learn something and bring that back to the guys that you play with. So I think this comes at just the perfect time. I expect the Wings, when they get back from this little break, to continue to fire on all cylinders. Look, Todd McClellan in this short time here has already had 2 7-game win streaks. I think he's coached, 21 games? and 14 of those 21 games were part of 2 different win streaks. Like, that's pretty awesome. The guy obviously knows what he's doing, and the players are dialed in. They are listening. I think this was the right move by Steve Yzerman. I think maybe it came a little bit late, but right now they are pedal to the floor, and they are working their way into getting into the playoffs and staying in the playoffs. And I think they have all the pieces to get in there. I don't know if they have all the pieces to win a series, but I do think they have all the pieces to get in and try to make a little bit of noise. So I think things are going really well for the Wings right now. I think this break comes at just the right time for them.
Yeah, it's real good stuff. It's good. Detroit sports are in a spot where we're taking the next step from rebuild into expectations and kind of going from teams that have no expectations to, hey, we can tune in, watch, competitive, entertaining, and you're starting to see cores develop with the Tigers, Lions, Pistons, and Wings. This is a good thing, and I think the managers, the general managers and the head coaches are in a good, comfortable spot right now. So it's real good. And also, too, don't want to toot my own horn here, but the Michigan State Spartan basketball team and the hockey team doing some things. They might have a chance to pull the double here, and so we'll pay attention to the Spartans basketball team, top 25 squad that has the son of a former great in Richardson doing his thing. Tom Izzo earning the accolades for his career and all the stuff he's done with Big Ten wins and tying the record and all that good stuff. And then Michigan State waxed that ass in hockey, so that was great that you got to see that up close. That's always nice to report back on and see with Trey Augustine, I think, being a Red Wings draft pick. So that'll be fun competition whenever he gets into the system. Looks like Kosa has a little bit of the developmental edge. People like the buzz around him, but goaltending, it's the buzz around the Detroit teams are very positive. And now with the Lions, it's all right. You're consistent, but now you got to get to the graduate level courses and get to the point where you can pick players that will help you get over the hump. Because, like I said, nobody wants to be the Bills. Nobody wants to be the Steelers. Getting to the postseason with this group is not just good enough. You gotta deliver the ring. And hopefully the Lions are on that path with this offseason, a critical one for Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. It's where you find out all the podcast releases, all the questions, the interesting, intriguing debates that we're having on there. Hit us up. If you liked or disliked anything that you heard, hit us up. Let us know. If you feel like, hey, wait a minute, we're way off, and you just want to let Brad Holmes cook and let's back off, let us know. You guys are not hesitant to share your opinions on what you think about what we say. And that's all we ask for, is whether you like us or you don't like us, hit us up, and we'll have the fun sports debate. Anywhere you listen to your favorite audio content, type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. I can't wait to fire it up next week. Good podcast. Can't wait to talk next week. Break down all the happenings around Detroit sports on the next episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.